And Mark joins us right now via Zoom. Mark, Deam, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your service, by the way, too. And speaking of your service, if you could, tell us how you found yourself in Vietnam all those years ago.
Well, I was drafted August 15th, 1967. I reported to Fort Benning, Georgia for basic training. So I was there for 8 weeks. I was going to come home and get married after basic training, but 3 days before the end of basic training, I got orders to get on the bus and go straight to Fort Polk, Louisiana, which was infantry training. So
Uh-oh.
from that, I kind of knew probably what was going to happen. So I did come home and get married after AIT at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and then 2 weeks later, I reported to Fort Lewis, Washington, and ended up staying there the month of January. I thought I was going straight to Vietnam from there, but a whole bunch of us were all going to the American Division as replacements, and they didn't have orders for us to go yet. So this was January of '68. So I ended up coming home on a 6-day leave because the captain in charge of us didn't know what to do with us. They were just keeping us busy, sitting out in the rain all the time up there, doing stuff we just done in Fort Polk, Louisiana. So I came on a 6-day leave, and when I got back, the orders had come. And on February 5th, we left on three C-141s out of McChord Air Force Base, which is right beside Fort Lewis, Washington.
Talk about the anxiety that you're going through when you go to infantry training, obviously knowing that you're going to find yourself in combat probably in Vietnam. And then the waiting game. How anxious do you get just wondering what's about to happen to you?
I don't know that I really thought that much about it. I mean, I was 20, I just turned 20 years old at that time. So at that time you think you're invincible, I guess. And I just kind of went along with the flow, and what it was, it was. And when I first got there, our company was south of Da Nang, about 15 miles, at a place called LZ Baldy. And we were out in the field all the time. And the whole company was together at that point, and there just wasn't much going on. And I thought, this is going to be okay. Well, in May, that all changed. So,
Yeah,
but for a while, this was right when Tet was kind of winding down, supposedly. And these guys had been up in Da Nang, defending Da Nang before I got there. They lost some guys that I never knew. But at this point, there just wasn't that much going on, and so I thought, this isn't going to be too bad.
and then you realized it was going to be pretty bad. Tell me about that day that kind of changed everything.
Well, it was probably about May 7th or 6th, somewhere in there. We were just out on a patrol in the morning, and the company commander got a radio call to set up a perimeter that helicopters were going to pick us up and take us somewhere. We didn't know where we were going. It ended up, we went to a place called LZ West, which is out west of Tam Key in the mountains. And there was a fire base there. There were bunkers all around it. The only people there was a LRP team, a long range reconnaissance patrol, like maybe 6 guys. It was all there. And they had trip flares all over the top of that hill, because it was a big hill and there were only 6 of them. So we occupied the bunkers, and then they left, and we stayed there for a couple of days, I guess. The next day, some rockets got fired west of us over our heads, probably heading to LZ Center, which is where our brigade talk was. And I don't know. I never heard where they landed or anything. But then that next day, a couple of helicopters got shot down south of LZ Center from a hill called Hill 352. And they called helicopter gunships in, and they found out that they were being fired at by something more than small arms fire. Turned out to be a 51 caliber machine gun that the NVA had up there. So all day long, they had fighters. There were 8 fighters were in the air all day long. They worked in pairs. So 2 of them would be making their runs and dropping their bombs. And then when they left, the next pair would go in, and 2 more pair would come on station. And they just went on all day, pounding that hill. One fighter actually got shot down. Never did hear what happened to it or anything, or what happened to the pilot. So it was on the 8th of May, we got picked up, and we got dumped out north of Hill 352, and our objective was go to Hill 352. Well, another company in our battalion, B Company, 1st Battalion, 6th Infantry, they got there before we did, and they went up it'd be the north side of that hill, and they captured that 51 caliber machine gun. And they had pictures of it and stuff. So we follow them up maybe half hour to an hour later, and we kind of get behind them. This isn't a real big hill, and I think there can't be anybody left there. Well, there was. So we kind of tried to dig foxholes. You can only get a couple feet deep because it was all rocky and stuff. So nothing happened until early in the morning, and some mortars got fired by the NVA, and they were landing outside a perimeter. But they must not have, not, they weren't exploding, so they must have not pulled the safety bins on them or something. I don't know. So that when it got light, we started moving towards where the NVA were, south of us, and we no sooner started moving, and there's the NVA. They were in spider holes all over that hill, and I got a piece of shrapnel in my knee almost immediately. And I'm laying on the ground and watching these guys. They're walking right up to the holes and shooting them. And
Yeah.
end up there were 2 guys that were killed, and there were 17 of us that were wounded.
What was the rest of your time in Vietnam like? Hopefully more uneventful than that.
Uh, well, when I got back to our battalion was at a place called LZ Bayonet, which was southwest a little bit of the main Chulai base. And when I got back there, of course, my Lieutenant Spencer, and also Sergeant Romero, our platoon sergeant, they were both wounded also. So they were back there, and theirs weren't too bad either. But when I got back there, my company wanted to put me on KP. So this is a bunch of crap. You guys are back here all the time, and I'm out in the field, and they want to put me on KB. So I talked to my lieutenant, and I said our company had a bunker on LZ Center that they could communicate with radios back to LZ Bayonet to the field. They could transfer. And I said I'd rather go back up there and just help those guys monitor the radio. So that's what I did, which is probably stupid because that was not a good place to be. But the commanding general of the Marical Division came out and actually pinned Purple Hearts on us while I was up there, which why he was out there, I have no idea.
Wow.
And they were just letting us kind of recuperate and get guys back, and then finally the rest of the time we were around Chulai. They called it the Rocket Pocket, and the mountains were called Rocket Ridge because the NVA would fire these 122 millimeter rockets into Chulai, and we were there to try to find them and stop them. And so we lost some more guys there walking in the ambushes, and it was not pleasant. And finally, it got to be towards the middle of September, and our company called me on the radio, and they wanted to know if I had any interest in going to work at the Brigade Talk as a radio operator because they had guys that were going home. And I said, heck yes, get me out of here. So my last 4.5 months I spent at LZ Bayonet at working the Brigade Talk, 12-hour shifts.
Very nice. Tell me about the feeling when you finally got the orders to go home and when you finally got on that plane and we're going to get out of the war zone. What's that feel like?
Oh, that was great. I thought about extending, actually. If you came back with less than 5 months, they just let you out. And I would have had to extend for 45 days. And I was married at that time. And of course, our only communication was letters. So, we wrote back and forth, and we kind of decided, no, I better get out of there when I can. So, I just came back to Sydney, Ohio, and went back to work on a survey crew at ODOT and spent 34 years there and then retired. And
yeah.
So I think it affects everybody differently.
Yeah, and you didn't feel the impact that much. Interesting. What do you think about the reception Vietnam veterans got back then versus now? I mean, there was a time, I'm sure, where nobody went around bragging that they'd been in Vietnam, but now I think it's changed, right?
It has. It has. I think a lot of Vietnam vets had a lot to do with that. I didn't have anything bad happen to me. I mean, I hear about people walking through airports and being spit on and stuff, but when I got back and I came back into Fort Lewis, well, I wasn't getting out of the Army. I had to, I got out of there pretty quick because we got in there and pretty early in the morning we were up at SeaTac Airport making reservations to fly back to Dayton, Ohio. And so I didn't really deal with that too much. I didn't deal with any of that, really. I didn't have any bad things like that happen to me. I've heard about other people said they have and got spit on and stuff, but that I did not have that experience. And
well, Mark, thank you so much for your service and for sharing your story, and we really appreciate everything you've done for this country and continue to do for the good folks of Ohio there. They're lucky to have a guy like you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Enjoyed it.